What matters in a campaign is money, particularly now, and she's killing it raising money.
Why
so
are the billionaires giving her money? Kevin, you know these people.
No,
My
she's not getting it from
know.
billionaires.
Why?
She's getting it.
Silicon
she's getting
Valley
it $20
Street.
at a time. She's killing it.
Over the weekend, Vice President Harris announced that her campaign raised a staggering $310 million in the month of July, and the Fox propaganda network is struggling to cope with that fact, leading to an awkward back and forth between Laura Ingraham and her right-wing guest, who was forced to fact-check her. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video and a lot of positive political news for the Democrats. It's always fun when the Fox Propaganda Network and conservative pundits have to report on good news for Democrats, right? You just basking in the schadenfreude keeps me going, and I hope it does you as well. So let's start with this, okay? Donald Trump was really, really happy in terms of July. He says, there's never been anything like the MAGA movement. We raised $139 million in July alone. Very happy about that. Very proud of that. He says, there's never been anything like a movement that could raise $139 million in July. Except the vice president says, I'll take that 139 and raise you $310 million.
Just in, the Harris campaign has raised a whopping $310 million this month alone in July.
Great stuff. As a matter of fact, that Truth Social post from Donald Trump was retweeted by the vice president's campaign. She says, we raised $310 million in July alone. So by the very metric that Donald Trump is citing to say that the MAGA movement is peerless, then that logic would suggest that Vice President Harris's campaign is just, objectively better than Trump's. Now, of course, the fundraising could shift between now and the election, right? I'm just using this as an opportunity to mock Trump and MAGA Republicans using their own boasts. A couple more clips to play before we get again into the awkward back and forth between Laura Ingraham and Kevin O'Leary of the Fox News network having to deal with the massive fundraising success of the Harris campaign.
If you look at the fact that she raised $310 million in the month of July, 3 million donors, 2/3 of them are first-time donors, 60% women, $20 million by way of Zoom. We see the Kamala momentum spreading. She's unifying the base. The politically unhoused are starting to come home, and independent thinkers are starting to lean in and pay attention.
The host and the other gentleman there, I think it's Leo Terrell, if I'm not mistaken. But this is the heart of MAGA in terms of legacy media, and you can just see just stoically as their Fox News guest reports, hey, listen, $310 million, the vast majority of whom were first-time donors, indicating that the party has been energized by her becoming the presumptive Democratic nominee. Another clip as well, just of a Harris campaign surrogate, a Fox News guest, just rubbing these very positive facts in the face of MAGA Republicans across the country.
But you also see her speaking directly to the American people by the organic organizing happening all around the country. We see over 177,000 volunteers who are fired up, ready to go, a record amount of money, $310 million, including 60% women, $20 million via Zoom. 2/3 of them are first-time voters. You see thousands of people, even bipartisan support for her, including Republicans for Harris, who just announced their efforts just a day or so ago. So you see her speaking directly to the American people about issues that matter to the American people, and that's Democrats, Republicans, and...
Love it. Antoine C. Wright, excellent surrogate, laying out the facts on the Fox Propaganda Network. He's right. I mean, my God, what a staggering sum. $200 million raised in the first week alone, $310 million raised totally in July. And especially when you consider that the Harris campaign really didn't begin at the 1st of July. This campaign is only a couple of weeks old. 170,000 volunteers, 66% of the fundraising coming from first-time donors. And then we got to get to the grassroots parts. The fact of the matter is, and we'll dive into it here after I play this clip of Laura Ingraham and Kevin O'Leary, who says that he's not particularly political, but he's one of those enlightened centrist types who always criticizes the left and Democrats and always praises Republicans and the right and goes easy on Trump. He's a conservative. He's just a shy one. Well, the topic turns to the source of the vice president's fundraising. Now, Laura Ingraham is just in sheer denial about this, and she's doing anything she possibly can to undermine that staggering $310 million fundraising sum. And she's like, well, it's coming from billionaires. So we're going to play this clip where Kevin O'Leary has to awkwardly fact check her again, and just a very awkward exchange between these two people live on air. And then we'll dive deeper into it.
If you're Kamala Harris right now, you're killing it on what matters. What matters in a campaign is money, particularly now. And she's killing it raising money.
Why
so
are the billionaires giving her money? Kevin, you know these people.
No,
My
she's not getting it from
know.
Billionaires.
Why?
She's getting it.
Silicon Valley and Wall Street
at a time. She's killing it. Look, I'm not
Silicon
defending
Valley and Wall Street is shoveling money at Kamala Harris. Why is that? You know they are.
Because it's working. Because she's figured out how to get these. Look, I'm just telling you the facts. Okay. You don't want to hear them? I won't tell them to you.
No, but
she's raising
it's
money.
not working for regular people. I'm not talking about her campaign. We know that rich people want to keep wages down for the middle class. That's happening, and it's happened over decades. We want to know why the billionaires in Silicon Valley, the ones who got hammered when Google was declared an antitrust violation today. I don't like that ruling, I can tell you that. Why are they shoveling money to Kamala Harris?
So you see how she's trying to rewrite everything. She was so fed up. She was so triggered when O'Leary was like, no, listen, the vast majority of the fundraising of the Harris campaign is not coming from millionaires and billionaires, it's actually coming from small-time donors and grassroots donors. I mean, and then, of course, the staggering hypocrisy, this idea that Laura Ingraham is trying to paint the Democratic Party as a party that's, opposed to the working class economically, and really they're interested in making the rich richer and helping the rich keep the middle class down. It was Donald Trump's flagship piece of legislation. One of the very few things that he actually got done during his administration was a $2 trillion tax cut for the rich. More than 80% of the benefits went to the vast majority of the benefits went to the people who need it the least, millionaires and billionaires. Okay, that was Donald Trump. That wasn't President Biden. That wasn't Vice President Harris. And that was, again, one of the few things he actually spent political capital on, Trump, that is, when he had the White House, when he had a sympathetic Supreme Court, when he had the House and we had the Senate, a $2 trillion tax cut for the rich, which also contributed to the national deficit and helped blow up the debt. That was the Trump record, cutting taxes on the rich, imposing a greater tax burden on middle and lower class people, deficit spending to hell and back even prior to the pandemic, and blowing up the national debt that Trump said that he was going to wipe out. Trump said that not only would he not add to the debt, he would add $0 to the debt. He would also take the debt that he inherited from President Obama, all the way back to President Washington, all that debt, and zero it out. He would get rid of it. When in fact, he added more than $8 trillion to that debt, the single greatest contribution to the debt in a single 4-year term by far. And even if you control for COVID, he has spent twice as much as President Biden. So fiscal responsibility is not with the Trump era Republican Party. The Democrats are by far more fiscally responsible, and they get better bang for their buck. When President Biden and Democrats spend trillions of dollars, it's not to give the rich tax cuts, okay? It's to invest in semiconductor manufacturing, domestic manufacturing, a sweeping infrastructure bill which will revitalize infrastructure across this country. So I'm sorry, Democrats are more fiscally responsible and they have better spending priorities. And Laura Ingraham's in total denial about that. And again, just love the fact check from Kevin O'Leary, a guy who, by the way, if you watch any of his content, this is a Shark Tank guy. If you see any of his interviews with respect to the economy and politics, it is very clear that he is conservative, right? He even says it in his phrasing. He's like, the Harris campaign is killing it where it matters most. Money, money, money. This guy is profit driven to hell and back. It just so happens that when it comes to fundraising right now, the Harris campaign is dominating Trump. That may change next month. Certainly, because also consider this. It's Trump who's courting billionaires. Trump is doing everything in his power to court billionaires, right? The likes of Elon Musk, David Sachs, and others. But again, Laura Ingraham doesn't care about that. So let's get into the fact check. So this is from Reuters. The Harris campaign announced Friday that it raised $310 million in July, fueled by small dollar donations that flowed into the war chest after President Biden bowed out of the race and endorsed Vice President Harris. The July figure, more than double the $138 million raised by Donald Trump and Republicans in the same months. brings the total money raised by Harris and Biden before her to more than $1 billion, the fastest a presidential campaign has crossed that threshold in history, the campaign said. Now, this is a Democratic campaign. Republican campaigns, the fastest presidential campaign, period, to ever reach $1 billion. More than 200 million of that 310 million came in the first week following Biden's endorsement of Harris. 1 week. The vast majority, 2/3 effectively, came in 1 week. And then 2/3 of the July donations came from first-time donors, and 94% of the donations, 94% of the donations were $200 or less. That totally undermines Laura Ingraham's lies, which is why Kevin O'Leary was fact-checking her. Last thing I want to play here is he compares it to Trump, the Harris campaign, 139 million Trump, 310 million Harris. The blue bar is an all-time record. Listen, folks, things may change, right? I am more confident in the election than I was prior to the president dropping out, but I want to make it very clear, and so should you. Take nothing for granted. We could still lose this. We have to be on our A game. We have to fundraise. We have to get out the vote. We have to spread the news, the good news, the cheer, the record, the enormously successful record of the Biden-Harris administration. We have to sell the fact at the time of recording that an enormously effective governor, Democratic governor, Tim Walz, has been chosen to be Vice President Harris's running mate. That is awesome. We have to keep the hype up. We have to spread the good news and the cheer and keep this momentum forward as we head into November. Great stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments.